Hello again, friends of poetry, English majors of the world, and all the rest of you who are curious about why anybody should care about poetry. My guest again for this series is our poet of the month, Matthew Sisson, a Newton resident, a published poet, and a wit in his own right when he lets it rip, when he lets his wit rip. We've had a couple sessions so far, and I hope we'll have a few more. Last time we read from his book of poetry on Adam was the poem. And Matthew suggested that for, give equal time, we should do the sequel to that, which is called In Defense of Eve. Now, this isn't going to get us into trouble, is it, Matthew? Two men, you hope so.
What else is the point if we don't get into trouble?
Well, okay, you've got the right spirit, all right. So our usual plan is to for Matthew to read it through once, and then I read it. Of course, you can follow the text on the screen beside you on the homepage of our website. So let's start so we can enjoy the poetry and talk a little bit.
Okay, thank you. In Defense of Eve. She knows wind across her legs and nipples, the burrowing of long-tailed moles beneath her feet. She favors honey but has never been stung. She knows to lie with Adam is more beautiful than the call of the wood thrush or the song of a sparrow. What can she know of subtlety? She has no word for evil, has never seen anything like it flicking in the flare of those nostrils, cannot associate sharp claws with danger, sees only God's love in those frostbitten eyes. Yes, she says, what can she really know of wrong?
Wonderful. Well, let me have a go at it, and then we'll chat about it. In Defense of Eve. She knows wind across her legs and nipples, the burrowing of long-tailed moles beneath her feet. She favors honey but has never been stung. She knows to lie with Adam is more beautiful than the call of the wood thrush or the song of a sparrow. What can she know of subtlety? She has no word for evil, has never seen anything like it flicking in the flare of those nostrils, cannot associate sharp claws with danger, sees only God's love in those frostbitten eyes. Yes, she says. What can she really know of wrong? Matthew, thank you for that poem. Can I ask right away, we've got a lot of Eve here, but we also have this visitor, which I take to be the infamous snake.
Serpent, yes.
And the evil that is flicking in the flare of the snake's nostrils is not something that she recognizes or understands or is afraid of even, right?
Right. I tried to, like Adam, I think I tried to portray Eve on the level of sensation only. She knows wind across her body. She feels below ground moles burrowing. By the way, that's all there is below ground. The concept of hell has not come around yet. She has taste. She favors honey, but she eats honey, I assume, or in my own mind, from a beehive, from a bee, but she's never been stung. She reaches in and eats honey. But this is Eden. In Eden, you can eat honey without being stung. And then she has the level of hearing. She hears the song of a sparrow. Maybe she has some sense of the beauty of it. And she also has the level of innocent sexuality. She knows the most beautiful thing in her world is to lie with Adam, which is completely appropriate in this context. So she has she's not self-aware yet. That hasn't come along yet. And so she She's never experienced evil. She's never experienced trickery. She's reached into beehives and never been stung. So how could she possibly understand temptation?
She's like Adam, as you said. Then she hasn't attained the stage of self-consciousness that we think we enjoy.
Right.
But it's a kind of a charmed life, is it not? This life of the two of them, that they have been given by God in Eden, a charmed existence. And I take, I go back to the long-tailed mole beneath her feet. She has, there's nothing in her consciousness that distracts her from sensory intake, sensory pleasure. And
Right.
if you can feel the motions of a mole beneath the ground, obviously you're very attuned to the senses. Your senses are very attuned to the earth.
This is a sort of animality, in a sense. I mean, to describe it as being in the moment, that's a kind of a cliche these days, but that's the only way she lives. In my mind, this is my conception of it. There's no thought involved here. It's just the world of sensation and the world of being in the moment and all those things. That's not a critique of her. That's what Eden is. I mean, we experience Eden, as I said last time, or we long for it in some way. Maybe when we immerse ourselves in work or in family or in lovemaking, we have some small taste of it.
Well, you spoke of the animality of Adam and of Eve, and there is a respect, another respect in which her life is charmed, in that for animals, sensation is a radar system to detect danger. For Eve, it is pure pleasure, pure sensation.
Right.
But not yet at the level of self-consciousness. What a wonderful thought that is to contemplate, and how much we would love to be back in that kind of.
We locked up. Rick, we locked up there.
No, we're okay. We're good. I think we're good.
Oh yeah, but I said something bad.
Oh, you did? Well, repeat it for the for my sake.
I think I said, "God damn, we locked up again."
Well, we're sailing again, but we long for that. That's what the back to nature movement is, and so forth. But I worry that we are so far down the road in our society that past the Enlightenment, past industrialization, pavement everywhere, that it's a long way to recover that kind of sense that you're speaking about.
I want to say something about that also. When I say animality, I don't mean that in a pejorative term. I just mean that's the level they function. This moment, it's almost incomprehensible to think how important this is to our culture. In some theologies, we are born into sin because of this. Immediately, we are out of the garden. This is the entry of evil into the world. This is the entry of suffering. The theodicy is the philosophical term for trying to understand why there is suffering in the world. This is about responsibility. It's about commitment. It's a really crucial moment. It's funny to think about how crucial in many ways, Western culture for a long time looked back to this moment and made judgments on itself about who we were, what our place is in the world. The moment we had that self-consciousness, self-awareness, or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, from that moment on, terrible things began to happen in the world, and good things too. But I still think we may not call it longing for temptation obviously came into the world, a very big problem. I feel we still long for the garden, but we may not even know. Not everyone would term longing for the garden, but we long for something we can't have, some kind of happiness and joy, which we enjoy briefly, and that might be as close as we come.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful goal to try and recover the innocence of pleasure and to take pleasure in innocence, the pure sensuality. And there are certain religions that are trying to get us to embrace that. And of course, I think partly of the indigenous peoples of the United States, um, who had that relationship to nature that the colonists could never have understood. But somehow, 2, 3 centuries later, we've woken up to the fact that, oh my gosh, the indigenous culture with its religion uh, positioned that society in the midst of nature that it could enjoy and to take pleasure in. And now, oh, well, could it be that we might learn something from them at this very late stage after the awful things that we've imposed on the indigenous people? So that's one avenue possibly toward recovering Eve's sensory purity, let's call it.
Yeah. The other thing is, after this moment, work began, and that's a very important thing too. We've now struggled to survive. We struggle to make a living. We struggle with our children. We struggle politically. That's our punishment for eating of this apple. Adam is condemned to till without much success, and Eve is condemned to suffer terribly in childbirth. So this is the moment that our relationship to the earth and to each other changed dramatically. I mean, the struggle to work and to survive and to make money and all those things came from this very moment.
Well, I might take issue with you on the word punishment there, because I've looked at those lines an awful lot, just as you have, and tried to make sense of both the childbirth and toiling by the sweat of your brow, earn your bread by the sweat of your brow. And I wondered if, in fact, the writer or the culture that produced this saw these as givens in life, and not good or evil, but they were givens in human life, and then tried to reason backwards to, well, how did these originate? How did this come to be? And there's an assumption here that it is punishment by the creator of this story. But on the other hand, hold on, I gotta. On the other hand, this is as you said, a natural condition of human existence. So I don't know.
It's reality, is what you're saying.
It is reality. There we are. Right.
I want to say one more thing, and I said it last time too. I think the story of Adam and Eve is God's realization that God has created these creatures who are independent of him. And I'm not sure that God can live with this independence. Mm-hmm. And that this is the first time we see an angry God, an vengeful God. And we'll see it again many times. We'll see it in the flood story. We'll see it before that in Cain and Abel. I mean, we haven't even talked about that. The next step is murder in our progression as human beings. But I think a lot of this, the biblical narrative, is God's trying to come to grip with his creations. And that at a certain point, God says, I can't deal with this anymore. And he wipes us all out with the flood, and then we begin to flourish again. So it also has the quality, I don't want to say a father, because I think that's too simple, but of God trying to come to grips with these independent creatures who can procreate, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's not only God now that has the power of creation, it's these two also have the power of creation. So I think the story is also about that too.
Well, there's textual evidence for what you say about God being put in a spot here, because there is a observation that now Adam and Eve has become as gods. Is that not in the creation story?
Right.
That knowing good and evil puts them in that
Right.
situation. It's a very curious combination of realism, and then this theological superstructure that gets put over it.
Yeah, I love the story myself. It's such a fantastic story, and it's been so influential. This one moment, this decision has really, in many ways, changed the way, or not changed. We think about ourselves in terms of this very moment many times.
Well, what else about this stands out? She says it closes at the end with her saying yes. She sees only God's love in those frostbitten eyes. That you're speaking of the snake's eyes, right?
Right.
And the yes, she says, is not amplified or explained. I take it that this is just her primal affirmation. She's embracing everything in the world, even the things that would threaten her if she understood them to be threats.
Right. And it's also the moment where she says yes and takes a bite of the apple. She's been spoken to by this creature who's convinced her that nothing can happen. She doesn't understand wrong. It's not quite childlike, because even children have some self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that moment where she takes the bite.
Well, listen, we're going to run out of time for this particular session. Shall we turn next time to another of your poems that come from Genesis? You willing to keep going with this biblical theme?
Of course.
I know you had said before that you'd like to get to the elements, the poem called The Elements, and I do too. So we'll reserve that. But next time we'll pick up the dirt on dust, taken from Genesis 3:19. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Well, Matthew, it is the birthday of the traditionally appointed birthday for William Shakespeare, and to whom we're indebted for thousands of neologisms, in words that or phrases that he coined, not to mention, how many dozens and dozens of plays. All of this from a boy born in Stratford upon Avon, where all he had was a grade school education up through, well, enough to get some Greek and Latin, I guess. So he's our patron saint, and we're in Shakespeare's debt. So we'll come back. We'll see whose birthday it is the next time we return. But Matthew, thanks for the chat, and the rest of you who are maybe watching, I hope you'll join us next time. We have a new interview dialogue every week, and as we're going to stretch this month out as long as I can keep Matthew engaged. And if you want his book of poetry, can they get it at the bookstore? Is there one in Newton or Brookline that has?
Actually, you can just email me.
Email you?
Yeah, I'll give you my.
I'll post that under the poem then, and then you can get a copy. Please call me Moby. It's full of great gems. So bless you today, Matthew, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Okay, bye.